The alarm systems across the Velen moon base screamed warnings into the quiet halls. Ambassador Nira stood in the command center, her thin fingers trembling as she watched the displays. Red dots filled the screen. So many red dots. Each one represented a Kreth warship, and they were all moving toward her homeworld. The Velens were not warriors. They never had been. For thousands of years, they had built beautiful cities, created art that moved the soul, and studied the mysteries of the universe. Their bodies were delicate, designed for a world of gentle breezes and soft sunlight. The heaviest thing most Velens ever lifted was a book. War was something they read about in historical texts, not something they lived through. But the Kreth did not care about art or beauty. The Kreth only consumed. They were a hive mind, millions of creatures thinking as one, driven by an endless hunger. They had already destroyed 2 Velen colonies. Nira had seen the reports. The Kreth ships would arrive, release swarms of their drones, and strip entire worlds clean. Buildings, forests, people, everything became food for the swarm. Nira turned to her communications officer. "Send the distress call again. All channels. Maximum priority." The officer's skin turned pale blue with fear. "Ambassador, we have sent it 17 times already. The Council allies have received our messages." "And what have they said?" The officer looked down at his console. "The Draknor hegemony says they are forming a military committee to assess the situation. The Astrel Federation requests more detailed scans of the Kreth fleet composition. The Quarren Commonwealth wants to review our defense treaty before committing forces." Nira felt her breathing membranes close tight. Committees, scans, treaty reviews. Her people had 3 days, maybe less, before the Kreth arrived. The Council's proper military powers would take weeks to move through their protocols and procedures. By then there would be nothing left to save. "Keep sending the signal," Nira said quietly. "Someone must hear us. Someone must come." Far across the galaxy, in a sector the Galactic Council considered barely civilized, a small cargo ship drifted through space. The ship was old and patched in a dozen places, but its engines ran smooth. Captain Tay Park sat in the pilot's chair, drinking tea and reviewing supply manifests. He was 3 days out from a frontier colony that needed medical supplies. Simple work, but honest. His ship's computer made a soft chime. Tay looked up from his tea. "What is it?" "Intercepted transmission," the AI responded. "Distress call. Encrypted but using an outdated Galactic Council protocol. I decoded it easily." Tay frowned. "Play it." A voice filled the cabin. It was soft and musical, but underneath the beauty was pure terror. The voice spoke in Galactic Common, begging for help. It described the Kreth swarm, the timeline, the desperate situation. It gave coordinates to a moon base in Velen space. Tay set down his tea. His mind was already calculating distances and burn rates. The Velen system was far off his route, very far. If he changed course now, he would miss his delivery window. The colony would have to wait for their medical supplies. But this was not about supplies or schedules. This was about people dying. Tay keyed in new coordinates. Computer, plot a course to the nearest UES military outpost. Best speed. "Captain, that will take us significantly off course. We will miss, and I know what we will miss." "Do it anyway." The ship turned in space, its engines burning bright. Tay opened a communication channel to the military outpost and sent the distress call forward with a simple message. They need help. Now. At UES Forward Station Gamma, the message reached Admiral Hana Choi while she was reviewing patrol schedules. She was a woman who had spent 30 years in space, and her face showed every hard decision she had ever made. She listened to the Velen distress call once, just once. Then she stood up and walked to the tactical center. "Get me the 5th Fleet," she said. Her second officer looked up in surprise. "Admiral, the 5th is on patrol near the outer rim. Recalling them will—" "I am not recalling them. I am redirecting them. Full military deployment." She pulled up a star map and highlighted the Velen system. "Here, maximum burn. They need to be there in 2 days. Admiral, the Velens are not our allies. We have no treaty with them." "The Council," Hana Choi turned to face her officer. Her eyes were hard as ship armor. "The Council is sending committees and requests for more data. The people sending that distress call will be dead before the Council finishes its first meeting. We are going. Prepare the fleet." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, Admiral." Across 3 sectors of space, human ships received their new orders. Destroyers broke off from patrol routes. Cruisers changed course mid-journey. Fighter squadrons prepared for combat launch. The 5th Human Expeditionary Fleet had been scattered across the frontier, but now it came together with purpose. In the command center of the flagship Indomitable, Lieutenant Yuna Kang sat at her communication station and studied everything she could find about the Velans. There was not much in the human databases. The Velans were a peaceful species, members of the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years. They had beautiful art and advanced science. They had never fought a war. Yuna looked at the images of Velan cities, towers that seemed to grow from the ground like crystal trees, gardens that floated in the air. It was all so delicate, so fragile. The Kreth would destroy it all in days. She thought about her own world, Earth. Humans knew what it meant to be hunted. Their entire history was written in survival and struggle. Even now, with all their technology and ships, humans remembered what it felt like to be prey. Lieutenant Kang, the ship's AI, said, "We will reach Velan space in 34 hours. Yuna nodded. The Velans had asked for allies from the Council. They were waiting for the Draknor or the Astral or the Quarren, proper civilized species with proper civilized procedures. They were going to get humans instead, Deathworlders from a planet that tried to kill them every day, warriors who learned to fight because their world gave them no choice. Yuna hoped the Velans would not be too frightened when they saw what Earth had sent them. Then again, she thought, they should save their fear for the Kreth, because the Kreth were about to learn what happened when you threatened someone under human protection. The 5th Fleet burned through space at speeds that made their engines scream. They pushed their ships harder than regulations allowed, running hotter and faster than was safe. But safe did not matter right now. Speed mattered. Getting there in time mattered. On the Velan moon base, Ambassador Nira watched her countdown clock tick lower. 2 days and 11 hours until the Kreth arrived. Still no response from the Council fleets. Still no help coming. She did not know that help was already on the way. She did not know that 300 human ships were racing across the stars to reach her. She did not know that thousands of human sailors and soldiers had just volunteered to fight and maybe die for people they had never met. All she knew was the countdown, and the silence and the terrible certainty that her people were alone. The sensors on the Velan moon base detected the ships 30 hours before the Kreth were expected to arrive. Ambassador Nira rushed to the command center when the alarm sounded. Her first thought was terror. Had the Kreth come early? Were they already doomed? But the signatures were wrong. These ships were smaller than Kreth hive vessels. They moved differently, too, burning through space at speeds that made the Velan sensors struggle to track them. The ships were pushing their engines so hard that any normal vessel would tear itself apart from the stress. "Identify those ships," Nira ordered. The sensor officer worked his console, comparing the signatures against the galactic database. His face went pale. "Ambassador, they are human ships. Category 12, Deathworlders. The database says their homeworld is classified as a high-danger environment. Extreme gravity, violent weather, aggressive biology at all levels." Nira felt her breathing membranes flutter. Humans. She had heard of them. The Galactic Council had granted them provisional membership only recently, and the debates had been fierce. Many species argued that humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They came from a world that tried to kill them constantly, and it had made them into something the galaxy had rarely seen. Before Nira could process this, her communication system activated. A face appeared on the screen. It was a young human female with dark hair pulled back from her face. Her eyes were brown and warm, but there was something in them that reminded Nira of a predator. Not threatening exactly, but aware. Always aware. "Velan Moonbase, this is Lieutenant Yuna Kang of the UES Indomitable," the human said. Her galactic common was clear but had a strange accent. "We received your distress call. We are here to help you." Nira opened her mouth, but no sound came out at first. Finally, she managed to speak. "Lieutenant, we appreciate your response, but we are waiting for our formal allies from the Council. The Draknor, the Astral, the Quarren, they have proper military protocols and established defense treaties with us." Yuna's expression shifted slightly. Was that sadness? Pity? "Ambassador, with respect, the Kreth Vanguard will be in weapons range in approximately 4 hours. According to our intelligence, your Council allies are still at least 40 hours away. We are here now. We can help now." Another voice came over the channel. This one was male, older, carrying the weight of command. Ambassador Nira, this is Captain Bin Lee of the destroyer Thunderchild. I am transmitting our tactical positions. As you can see, we have already placed our fleet between your moon base and the approaching Kreth force. We did not wait for permission because people are about to die. We stopped that from happening. It is what we do. Nira looked at the tactical display her officer brought up. The human ships had indeed positioned themselves in a defensive formation. They had placed their own vessels directly in the path of the Kreth swarm. They were making themselves the first target. Her council members gathered around her, their skin colors shifting through various shades of fear and uncertainty. They whispered among themselves, Deathworlders, violent species, unpredictable, dangerous. But they were here. They had come when no one else did. Very well, Nira said, her voice steadier than she felt. We accept your assistance, humans of Earth. Please coordinate with our defense network. The human lieutenant smiled. It was a small smile, tired but genuine. Thank you, Ambassador. You will not regret this. Indomitable out. The screen went dark. Nira sat down in her chair, her legs suddenly weak. Around her, the Velen Defense Force began coordinating with the human fleet. The humans shared their tactical data freely, showing positions, weapons capabilities, and battle plans with a speed that made Velen heads spin. In the command center of the Indomitable, Admiral Hana Choi stood with her arms crossed, watching the tactical display. Her fleet had made the journey in record time. 3 ships had suffered engine damage from the hard burn, but they were still combat capable. That was what mattered. Status report, she said. Her tactical officer, a young man named Hyun, responded immediately. All ships in position, Admiral. Fighter squadrons are prepped and ready to launch. Marine detachments are standing by in case of boarding actions. The Kreth Vanguard is on schedule. They will arrive in 3 hours and 42 minutes. Hana nodded. Have they detected us yet? Yes, Admiral. They know we are here. Their formation has not changed. They are still coming directly at the Velen homeworld. They think we will run, Hana said quietly. They think we are like the other council species, soft, afraid. Hyun smiled grimly. They are about to learn otherwise. Hana looked at the display showing the Kreth fleet. Hundreds of ships moving in perfect coordination. The hive mind gave them advantages. They never panicked. They never hesitated. They never broke formation unless the queen ships commanded it. But they had never fought humans before. Pass the word to all ships, Hana said. We hold the line. No matter what comes through that void, we hold the line. These people called for help and we answered. That means something. That means everything. The message went out across the fleet. In fighter bays, pilots checked their weapons one last time. In marine barracks, soldiers donned their armor and loaded their rifles. In engineering sections, crews coaxed every last bit of power from their reactors. The humans prepared for war the way their ancestors had for thousands of years, with determination, with courage, with the absolute certainty that they would not abandon those who needed them. On the Velen moon base, Nira watched the human fleet on her displays. She noticed things that seemed strange. The human ships did not spread out in the traditional defensive formation. Instead, they clustered in groups, leaving gaps that looked like weaknesses. Their fighters did not form patrol patterns, but instead drifted in seemingly random orbits. Are they incompetent? One of her advisors whispered. Their formation has obvious flaws. The Velen military liaison, an old scholar named Torvin who had studied warfare as an academic exercise, shook his head slowly. No, look closer. Those gaps are not mistakes. They are bait. Those random fighter patterns cover every approach vector. The humans are not defending. They are setting a trap. Nira felt a chill run through her. These Deathworlders thought differently than any species she had ever encountered. They did not simply react to threats. They anticipated. They planned. They turned their enemy's aggression against them. The countdown continued. 3 hours. 2 hours. 1 hour. Then the Kreth arrived. The Vanguard fleet emerged from hyperspace exactly where the humans predicted. 200 Kreth vessels, each one bristling with weapons and filled with thousands of drones. The hive ships immediately locked onto the Velen moon base and began their approach. They found humans in their way. For a moment, nothing happened. The Kreth fleet seemed to pause as if the hive mind was processing this unexpected development. Then they opened fire. Space lit up with weapons discharge. Plasma bolts and missile trails filled the void. The Kreth threw enough firepower to crack a planet at the human fleet. The human ships moved. Nira had never seen anything like it. The human vessels dodged and weaved through the weapons fire with impossible precision. They used their engines in ways that should not work, spinning and banking in the vacuum of space as if they were atmospheric craft. They did not try to tank the damage like heavy Council warships. Instead, they simply were not there when the shots arrived, and they fired back. Human railguns sent solid metal slugs through Kreth hulls. Missile pods launched swarms of smart weapons that hunted their targets with relentless determination. Energy weapons carved through shields and armor. The humans fought with a fury and precision that took Nira's breath away. But what truly shocked her was when the human fighters entered the battle. Small craft, barely larger than shuttles, dove into the Kreth formation like predatory birds. They flew through gaps that existed for only seconds. They targeted weak points with surgical accuracy, and they never stopped moving. One pilot, Commander J. Han, according to the identification codes, destroyed 3 Kreth command nodes in less than 2 minutes. His fighter twisted through space in ways that would turn a Velen's internal organs to liquid. Yet he flew with absolute control, making the impossible look effortless. How? Torvin whispered. How can they endure those forces? Nira understood then. These were Deathworlders. They came from a high-gravity world where just walking was constant work. Their bodies were built dense and strong. What would kill a Velen was merely uncomfortable to a human. The battle raged for an hour. The Kreth could not understand why their prey fought back so fiercely. The hive mind kept sending more ships forward, convinced that the next wave would break through. It never did. When the vanguard finally retreated, 70 Kreth ships remained out of 200. The humans had lost 6 destroyers and dozens of fighters, but the Velen moon base was untouched. The homeworld below was safe for now. The celebration on the Velen moon base was quiet and uncertain. They had survived the first attack, but everyone knew the Kreth would return with greater numbers. Ambassador Nira stood in the command center, watching human crews work on their damaged ships. Even in victory, the humans did not rest. They repaired, reloaded, and prepared for the next fight. Admiral Hana Choi requested a meeting to discuss defensive strategy. When she arrived at the Velen command center, Nira was surprised by how ordinary the admiral looked. She was not tall or imposing. Her uniform was clean but worn. She looked tired, with lines around her eyes that spoke of too many battles and too little sleep. But when Hana spoke, everyone listened. The vanguard was a probe, she said, pointing at the tactical display. The Kreth wanted to see how we fight. Now they know. The main fleet will come with different tactics. They will adapt. How long do we have? Nira asked. 18 hours. Maybe 20. They are regrouping just outside sensor range. One of the Velen military advisors, Torvin, leaned forward. Admiral, your losses were significant. 6 destroyers, 47 fighters. Can you hold against a larger force? Hana looked at him with those tired eyes. We will hold. We do not have a choice. You called for help, we came. That means we stay until you are safe or we are dead. Those are the only 2 options. The simple certainty in her voice made Nira's breathing membranes close tight. These humans meant it. They would die rather than abandon the Velens. We do not understand, Nira said softly. We are not your allies. We have no treaty. We offer you nothing. Why do you fight so hard for strangers? Hana was quiet for a moment. Then she said, because you needed help. That is enough. Before Nira could respond, alarms blared through the station. The sensor officer shouted, breach! We have a breach in the outer ring. Something got through our shields. On the displays, Nira saw the nightmare. A Kreth boarding pod had punched through the station's outer hull. The pod was organic, pulsing with disgusting life. As they watched, it split open and Kreth drones poured out into the corridors. The drones were worse than Nira had imagined from the reports. They moved on 6 legs, their bodies covered in chitinous armor. Their faces had too many eyes and mouths filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. Acid dripped from their claws. The hive mind drove them forward with perfect coordination, turning them into a living wave of death. The Velen security forces tried to stop them. They fired their small defensive weapons, but the Kreth kept coming. Velens were not built for combat. Their bodies were fragile. Their instincts told them to flee, not fight. Within minutes, the security teams were falling back, overwhelmed and terrified. Then Captain Sora An and her human marines arrived. Nira watched through the security cameras as the humans established a firing line in the corridor. They moved with practiced efficiency, each Marine knowing exactly where to position themselves. When the Kreth drones charged around the corner, the humans opened fire. The difference between Velen security and human Marines was like the difference between a gentle rain and a hurricane. The humans did not fire carefully aimed single shots. They unleashed a wall of bullets that shredded the first wave of Kreth drones. When the creatures tried to flank, the Marines shifted their formation in seconds, closing the gap. When acid blood splattered across their armor, they kept fighting. One Marine, a woman named Reen Bayek, took a direct hit from Kreth acid spray. The corrosive liquid ate through her shoulder armor. Nira watched in horror, certain the Marine would fall. Instead, Ryn switched her rifle to her other hand and kept firing. When her rifle ammunition ran out, she drew her pistol. When a Kreth drone leaped at her from the ceiling, she used its own momentum to slam it into the wall, then shot it 3 times in its cluster of eyes. The battle was brutal and ugly. The Kreth were monsters, yes, but watching the humans fight them, Nira realized something terrifying. The humans were not fighting like desperate defenders. They were fighting like hunters. Like predators who had found prey that fought back and enjoyed the challenge. Captain Sora moved through the combat with calm precision. She called out targets, redirected her Marines, and shot Kreth drones with the same casual efficiency that Nira used to review reports. This was not special for these humans. This was just another day. The fight lasted 20 minutes. When it was over, 43 Kreth drones were dead. The human Marines had suffered injuries but no deaths. They secured the breach point and began setting up defensive barriers as if they had done this 1,000 times before. Because they had. Nira went down to the outer ring to see the aftermath. The corridor was a mess of Kreth bodies and acid burns. The smell was terrible. But the Marines were already cleaning their weapons and checking each other's armor. One Marine was laughing about something while another bandaged his arm. Captain Sora saw Nira and walked over. Her armor was scorched and dented. There was Kreth blood on her helmet, but she stood straight and calm. "The breach is sealed, Ambassador," Sora said. "We will maintain a guard here in case they try again." Nira looked at this human warrior. "You were not afraid." Sora tilted her head slightly. "Fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. But we were trained to work through fear, to do the job anyway. On your world," Nira said slowly. "What made you this way?" Sora was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Earth is not kind. Our gravity is heavy. Our weather is violent. Our animals have teeth and claws and venom. Our microbes can kill us. Even our plants can be dangerous. For millions of years, everything on our world tried to kill our ancestors. So they learned. They adapted. They became hunters instead of prey. They became survivors. And now we take that strength and use it to protect others," Sora said simply. "We know what it is like to be hunted. We know what it is like to face something bigger and stronger and more numerous. We survived it. So when we see others facing that same terror, we step in. Because we can. Because we must." Nira felt something shift in her understanding. She had been afraid of these Deathworlders. Afraid of their violence and their weapons and their brutal efficiency. But she understood now. That violence was not mindless aggression. It was controlled, directed, used in service of something greater. The humans had turned their harsh world into strength. And then they had decided to use that strength to protect the weak instead of prey on them. Over the next hours, Nira watched the humans prepare for the main Kreth assault. They worked with tireless energy, repairing ships, restocking ammunition, caring for their wounded. The Velen doctors tried to help with the injured Marines, but they were shocked by human physiology. Bones that would shatter a Velen were only fractured in humans. Wounds that would kill most species had the Marines joking and requesting to return to duty. Lieutenant Kai Song, a human logistics officer, reorganized the entire Velen supply network in an afternoon. He moved materials with ruthless efficiency, cutting through traditional procedures and protocols. When a Velen clerk protested that his methods violated established guidelines, Kai looked at him and said, "Your guidelines assume you have time. You do not. Adapt or die." The clerk adapted. Fighter pilot Jay Han worked with the Velen technicians, teaching them how to use their sensors more effectively. He showed them tricks for tracking Kreth ships, exploiting their hive mind communication patterns. The Velens had better technology than the humans in many ways, but they had never thought to use it like this. They built their tools for exploration and discovery. The humans took those same tools and turned them into weapons. 18 hours after the Vanguard retreated, the sensors detected the main Kreth fleet. This time there were not 200 ships. There were over 1,000. Nira stood in the command center, staring at the display. So many ships, so many drones. The human fleet numbered only 300 vessels, and many were damaged from the first battle. Admiral Hana stood beside her, studying the approaching swarm. Her expression never changed. She looked at the overwhelming enemy force the same way she might look at a difficult math problem. Just another challenge to solve. We will need to adjust our tactics, Hana said calmly. They have numbers. We have experience. They have coordination. We have creativity. They know what we did last time. We will do something different. She turned to her command staff and began issuing orders. The humans moved into new formations. Fighter squadrons deployed in unexpected patterns. The big ships repositioned themselves in ways that looked random, but Nira was learning to see the trap underneath. The Kreth came like a tidal wave, expecting to overwhelm the defenders through sheer mass. They had never fought Deathworlders before. They were about to learn the difference. The main Kreth assault began at dawn, though dawn had no meaning in space. The attack was everything Nira had feared. Wave after wave of hive ships crashed against the human defensive line. The void lit up with weapons fire so thick it looked like a solid wall of light. Explosions bloomed and faded. Ships died on both sides. The humans fought like demons. They used tactics that made no sense to traditional military doctrine. They would fall back from one position only to ambush the Kreth from another angle. They would feign damage to lure enemy ships into kill zones. They split their forces in ways that looked like suicide, then reunited at the perfect moment to catch the Kreth in crossfire. Admiral Hana commanded from the Indomitable with icy calm. Her orders were precise and economical. She never raised her voice, never showed panic. When a Kreth battle group broke through the left flank, she simply redirected 2 destroyer squadrons and a wing of fighters. The breach was sealed within minutes, but the cost was terrible. Nira watched human ships die. The destroyer Thunderchild, commanded by Captain Bin Lee, took a direct hit from 3 Kreth plasma cannons. The ship broke in half, spilling atmosphere and debris into space. 2 cruisers collided while evading a Kreth ram attack. Fighters vanished in explosions too fast to track. Each loss was reported to Admiral Hana. Each time she acknowledged it with a single nod and continued commanding. Nira did not understand how the Admiral could be so calm while her people died around her. Then she saw Hana's hands. The Admiral's hands gripped the edge of her console so tightly her knuckles were white. Her jaw was clenched so hard the muscles stood out. She was not calm. She was controlled. There was a difference. The battle raged for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant combat that would have broken any other species. But the humans did not break. They bent. They adapted. They lost ships and people and kept fighting anyway. And slowly, impossibly, they pushed the Kreth back. The hive mind could not understand what was happening. They had numerical superiority. They had coordination. They had weapons powerful enough to crack moons. But these Deathworlder ships kept slipping through their attacks, kept finding weak points, kept killing hive ships faster than the Kreth could respond. When the Kreth finally retreated, they had lost over 400 ships. The human fleet was down to less than 200 combat-capable vessels. It was a victory, but it felt like defeat. So much destruction, so much death. Then the new ships arrived. The sensors detected them first. Large vessels, powerful, displaying identification codes for the Draknor hegemony, the Estrel Federation, and the Quarren Commonwealth, the proper allies. The council fleets that Nira had called 4 days ago. High Commander Vrex of the Draknor led the fleet. His ship was enormous, covered in ceremonial armor and carrying enough weapons to level a continent. When he transmitted his greeting, his voice was full of formal gravity and self-importance. "Ambassador Nira," Vrex said, "the Draknor hegemony has arrived. Your ordeal is over. We will establish a proper defensive perimeter, according to council military protocols. Please stand down your temporary defenders and allow us to take command." Nira felt something strange inside her, something she had never felt before. It was anger. "Commander Vrex," she said, her voice cold. "The ordeal was over 6 hours ago. The humans saw to that." Vrex seemed confused. "The humans? The Deathworlder species? Surely you cannot mean that provisional members of the council—" "I mean exactly that. Nira interrupted. While you were forming committees and requesting data, the humans were fighting and dying. They have been here for 2 days. They have destroyed over 600 Kreth ships. They have lost nearly half their fleet protecting us. Where were you? There was silence on the channel. Then Vrex said stiffly, We came as quickly as proper military protocols allowed. The humans came as quickly as their engines could push them, Nira replied. There is a difference. The Council fleet settled into orbit around the Velen system. They established defensive positions with textbook precision, following protocols that were thousands of years old. Everything was done properly by the book according to regulation. Commander Vrex requested a tour of the battlefield. He brought his senior officers and military analysts. They examined the debris fields with professional interest. They reviewed tactical data with academic curiosity. They studied the Kreth ship's remains like scientists examining specimens. Then they saw the human casualties. The humans had set up a temporary morgue on the Velen moon base. Rows and rows of bodies in sealed bags. Each one had a name, a rank, a service number. Each one had been a person who left their homeworld knowing they might not return. Vrex stood in the morgue surrounded by his officers. The Draknor were a proud warrior species, but they fought according to honor and tradition. They had rules about combat, protocols about acceptable losses. The humans seemed to have only one rule: protect those who need protection. How many? Vrex asked quietly. Captain Sora An stood at attention nearby. 2,347, she said, not counting the wounded who will recover. And you achieved this fighting a force that outnumbered you 5-1? Yes, Commander. Vrex looked at the sealed bags. These losses are catastrophic by any standard military assessment. Sora's expression did not change. Every person here volunteered. Every person here knew the risks. We did not come to fight a fair battle. We came to save lives. Mission accomplished. One of the Draknor officers, a tactical specialist, spoke up. Captain, we have reviewed your battle tactics. Some of your maneuvers should have been impossible. You used your own damaged ships as bait. You deliberately exposed your flanks to draw enemy fire. You broke every rule of defensive combat. Yes, Sora agreed. The rules assume you have time to be cautious. We did not. The rules assume you will fight again another day. We were willing to die here if necessary. The officer looked disturbed. But why? These are not even your allies. Your species has no treaty obligations. You gain nothing from this. Sora turned to look at him directly. We gain the knowledge that we helped people who needed help. We gain the certainty that we answered when someone called. We gain the ability to look at ourselves and know we did the right thing. That is enough. Later, Commander Vrex met with Admiral Hana in the Indomitable's conference room. He brought his command staff. The meeting was supposed to discuss the transfer of defensive responsibilities now that the proper council forces had arrived. Admiral Hana sat at the table, still in her combat uniform. She had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red from exhaustion, but she sat straight and alert. Vrex began with a formal speech about council procedures and proper military chains of command. Hana listened politely until he finished. Is there anything else? She asked. Vrex seemed taken aback. Admiral, we are assuming command of the Velen defense. You may stand down your forces. No. The word hung in the air like a challenge. I beg your pardon, Vrex said. We will not stand down, Hana said calmly. The Kreth are still out there. They will attack again. When they do, we will fight them. You are welcome to fight alongside us if you wish, but we are not leaving. Admiral, this is irregular. The council was not here when it mattered, Hana interrupted. You arrived after the battle was won. You came with proper protocols and formal procedures. We came with ships and soldiers willing to die for strangers. There is a difference. Vrex's face darkened with anger. You overstep, human. Your species is barely recognized by the council. You have no authority here. Hana stood up slowly. Despite being smaller than the towering Draknor commander, she seemed to fill the room. I have the authority of having been here first, of having fought when no one else would, of having bled for these people when you were still debating committee assignments. If you want us to leave, you will have to make us, and I do not think you want to try that. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The Draknor officers put their hands near their weapons. The human marines standing guard did the same. Then Vrex did something unexpected. He laughed. It was a booming sound that broke the tension. By the ancestors, he said, you are mad. All of you humans are absolutely mad. He shook his head. But perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. Madness, bravery, the willingness to act while others debate. He looked at Hana with a new respect. Very well, Admiral. We will coordinate with your forces. Equal partners in defense, Hana nodded. That is acceptable. As the Draknar officers left, Vrex paused at the door. Admiral Hana, he said, your people have taught the Council something today. We have been civilized for so long that we forgot what it means to truly protect others. You remember? Perhaps that is the gift of being from a death world. You never forget what it means to fight for survival. Perhaps, Hana agreed. Or perhaps we just never forgot that being civilized means helping those who cannot help themselves. Vrex left without another word. Hana sat back down heavily. Her second officer, Hyun, approached quietly. Admiral, you need rest. I will rest when the Velans are safe, Hana said. Not before. Outside the window, the human fleet maintained its defensive positions. Battered, depleted, exhausted, but still ready. Still watching. Still guarding people they had never met before this week. That was what it meant to be human. 3 days passed before the Kreeth made their final attempt. They came with everything they had left, throwing their remaining forces at the combined human and council fleet. The battle lasted 4 hours and ended with the Kreeth in full retreat. They would not return to Velan space. The hive mind had learned that some prey was not worth the cost. Ambassador Nira stood in the command center, watching the enemy fleet disappear into hyperspace. Around her, Velans celebrated quietly, their relief obvious. They had survived. Their worlds were safe, but Nira could not celebrate. She kept thinking about the human morgue and the rows of sealed bags. 2,347 humans had died for her people. For strangers, for a species they had never met before. She made a decision. 1 week later, Nira stood before the Galactic Council via holographic transmission. The great chamber on the Council homeworld was filled with representatives from hundreds of species. They had gathered for an emergency session, called to discuss the Velan situation and the human intervention. Behind Nira stood Admiral Hana Choi and the human diplomatic envoy. The Admiral looked uncomfortable in her formal uniform. She was a warrior, not a politician, but she stood straight and calm as always. Members of the Council, Nira began, the Velan Empire formally requests a mutual defense pact with the United Earth Systems. The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives objected, argued, demanded explanations. The Quarren representative stood up, his face showing shock. Ambassador Nira, this is highly irregular, he said. Humanity has only provisional membership in the Council. They lack the diplomatic history, the cultural integration, they lack what? Nira's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. They lack centuries of bureaucratic tradition. They lack committees that form more committees. They lack the ability to debate while people die. She pulled up a holographic display showing the timeline of her distress calls. Here is when we first called for help. 3 days before the Kreeth arrived. And here are the responses from our proper allies. The display showed messages from the Draknar, Estrel, and Quarren, requests for more data, formation of assessment committees, debates about treaty obligations, all very proper, all very civilized, all completely useless to people about to be slaughtered. And here, Nira continued, pulling up another file, is the human response. Captain Tay Park received our distress call and immediately contacted his military. Admiral Hana Choi listened to our plea once and deployed her entire fleet. They did not form committees. They did not request additional data. They came, they fought, they bled for us. She brought up images from the battle. Human ships burning, Marines fighting Kreeth drones in close combat, pilots flying damaged fighters into enemy formations. The council members watched in silence. You taught us about civilization, Nira said, her voice softer now. You taught us about art and culture and proper procedure, and those things are valuable. But the humans taught us something else. They taught us about humanity, about the willingness to sacrifice for others, about answering a call for help not because of treaties or trade agreements, but because it is right. She gestured to Admiral Hana. This woman lost nearly half her fleet protecting us. Over 2,000 of her people died. And when I asked her why, do you know what she said? She said it was enough that we needed help. That was her entire reason. We needed help, so she came. The Draknar representative, Commander Vrex, stood up. I was there. I saw the aftermath. The humans fought a battle that should have been impossible to win. They used tactics that violated every principle of cautious warfare. They took risks that no sane commander would accept. And they won. He looked around the chamber. I command the Draknor hegemony's military forces. We are considered the finest warriors in the council. But I watched these humans fight and I learned something. Being a warrior is not about strength or weapons or technology. It is about the willingness to stand between the helpless and the horror. The humans understand this in a way we have forgotten, another representative objected. But they are Deathworlders. Their entire culture is based on violence and survival. They are dangerous. Yes, Nira agreed. They are dangerous. To those who prey on the weak. To those who attack the helpless. To the Kreth and anyone else who believes strength gives them the right to take what they want. But to those who need protection, the humans are the safest allies in the galaxy. A new transmission interrupted the debate. It came from the frontier sectors, places where council influence was weak and pirates operated freely. 3 more species were sending distress calls, raids on their colonies, attacks on their merchant ships, desperate pleas for help. The council members looked at each other uncomfortably. The frontier was far away. Sending fleets would require extensive planning, risk assessments, treaty reviews. We hear them, Admiral Hana said quietly. She stepped forward and all eyes turned to her. Those distress calls. We hear them. The 5th Fleet is already moving to respond. We will answer. You cannot do that without council approval, a representative objected. There are protocols. People are dying, Hana said simply. We will not debate while they suffer. You can approve our actions later if you wish. Or not, it does not matter. We are going anyway. Nira looked at the council representatives. You see? This is what I am trying to tell you. You debate, they act. You follow protocols. They save lives. I know which one I trust when darkness comes. The formal vote on the defense pact took hours. There were objections and concerns and lengthy discussions about precedent. In the end, the pact passed, though not unanimously. But by then, it did not matter. Admiral Hana had already left for the frontier, taking her battered fleet to answer new calls for help. She did not wait for permission. She did not wait for formal approval. She heard people calling for help and she went. In the weeks that followed, more species reached out to the humans, not through formal council channels but directly. They sent their distress calls to human frequencies. They asked for the Deathworlders specifically, because they had learned what the Velans learned. When you call humans for help, they come. Captain Tay Park, the freighter captain who first intercepted the Velan distress call, became something of a legend. Other independent captains started monitoring for distress signals. When they found them, they contacted the nearest human military outpost. A network began to form, informal but effective. Lieutenant Yuna Kang, who had first contacted the Velans, received a commendation for her service. But she did not care about medals. She was already back on duty, monitoring communication channels, listening for the next call for help. Captain Sora An and her Marines trained Velan security forces in combat techniques. The gentle scholar species would never be warriors like the humans, but they learned to defend themselves. They learned that even peaceful people could stand up to predators when they had to. Commander Jay Han started a training program for council pilots. He taught them human tactics, human maneuvers, human ways of thinking about combat. Some species could not handle the physical stress, but others adapted and became better pilots for it. The galaxy was changing. Slowly, carefully, species were learning from the humans, not to become violent or aggressive, but to become strong, to become willing to fight when fighting was necessary, to become protectors instead of just protected. Ambassador Nira returned to her homeworld for the first time since the invasion. She walked through the cities that had nearly fallen to the Kreth. She saw Velans going about their lives, creating art, pursuing knowledge, living in peace. Peace that humans had died to preserve. She stood in the capital city's central garden and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were patrolling, watching, protecting, not for payment or glory, but because it was right. A monument was being built in the garden. It would honor the human dead, the ones who had fallen in the Velan defense. Nira had argued that it should be large and impressive, worthy of such sacrifice. But Admiral Hana had requested something different. Something simple, just a stone with names carved into it and a single line of text. We answered the call. That was all. No grand statements. No claims of heroism. Just the simple truth. Nira touched the stone, still being carved by Velen artisans. They were taking great care with each name, making sure every human who died was remembered properly. 2,347 names. 2,347 reasons why the galaxy would never be the same. Because humans had shown them something new. Not advanced technology or superior weapons or brilliant tactics. Something simpler and more powerful. They had shown the galaxy what it meant to keep a promise, what it meant to stand by your word, what it meant when someone says we will be there and actually means it. The humans had come when no one else would. They had fought when no one else could. They had died for strangers because those strangers needed help, and the galaxy was learning from them. Somewhere in the void, a new distress call was being sent. Somewhere a species was facing destruction. Somewhere, hope was fading. But the call would not go unanswered because humanity was listening. And humans always kept their promises.